Welcome to the Lift Your Story podcast with guests, podcast hosts from Total Nonsense with Josh and Bosch. Hi, everyone. I'm LaurieAnn. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and with.
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas.
I guess I'm another guy. I'm Joshua Rohde. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota.
And I am the fourth wheel in this show today. I am Mike Bosch from Springtown, Texas.
This is great. So we started this. We are both couples of podcasters, and with Roy and I, we have Lift Your Story. And Josh and Mike, tell us about yours.
Our podcast is really, really simple. We can boil it down into pretty much the title. It's Total Nonsense with Josh and Bosch. And we spend anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour just diving into mainly what's in Mike's head, but sometimes what comes out of my head or a guest's head. And we partake in some total nonsense. Is that accurate, Mike?
Yeah, I think so. I think, obviously the total nonsense really came out of, we didn't want to necessarily set ourselves into one particular category. And we wanted to be able to talk to just a variety of people, or just have the freedom to really share some experiences. Josh and I work together while we're in remote locations. We do have the privilege to interact on a daily basis, and it's crazy how just some everyday nonsense happens to us every single day. And so we actually have some fun stories that we get to share. And I think what's cool about this world that we're living in is that we're able to interact with more people than we ever would have before. So while the title is Total Nonsense, usually we do have it's just not complete rambling on for 30 minutes. We usually have a story or a idea of what we're going to share with the internet world. And then maybe we get off topic a little bit from time to time, but we're definitely having a blast, and we're happy to be on your show.
Yeah, we're
today.
super excited. And I think the one thing that to just add to Mike's much better description of our podcast, one of the things we said is we don't want to get too heavy. So we don't talk about politics or religion or the mumbo jumbo in the news necessarily. Really trying to keep it lighthearted, trying to connect with people. And Mike has done an outstanding job of finding us some guests that really are a wide variety of guests, which is super exciting to talk to different people. And I'm sure you guys experience that, right? Where I never would have, talked to in this amount of depth, this person who does this, but I learned so much. So it's super fun.
Yeah, it's interesting because LaurieAnn and I, when we decided to do a podcast, then we're like, what are we going to do it about? And we ended up, because we started out, well, let's do about being opposite. That's how we started. And
we were called the Oppositors.
Yeah. And then, she made that up. That's her word.
Did you trademark that?
She's got the patent on that word.
Yeah.
So,
there you go.
So, and then we thought, okay, well, then we started doing entrepreneurs and people in health and wellness and authors. But we found out, and we've transitioned a lot in our podcast, but we found out that we'll start talking to, say, an author, and he started talking about his book, but then he'll say something else that's really a lot more interesting than his book.
Don't tell him that, but
yeah, right. Hey, okay, forget about that. Let's talk about this. But really seriously. So we found out that no matter who it is, everyone has a story. So that's when we changed ours to Lift Your Story, because kind of like you guys, we're not limited to anything. We believe that anyone has something to offer that people want to hear.
Right.
And that's kind of our transition. And I think we've found our spot. Don't you, LaurieAnn?
I do too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what
I thought was interesting the last time I was on your show is that you guys had, or not admitted, whatever, but you revealed that you guys had never met in person.
No.
Right? Did you
So-
know that, Josh? Can you believe that?
I didn't know that.
Well,
I mean,
actually,
I can believe it because on some level, because I live in the Great North and you're not coming here. You've made that clear. It's just too cold and too crazy. So I could see where maybe Roy has just decided, hey, you're either coming to me or I'm not meeting you, LaurieAnn. That's all there is.
Right,
to
I
it.
gotta happen.
no. I was going to go up and see LaurieAnn for her birthday. We were going to go up there.
Oh,
And COVID happened.
Yep.
And so I didn't get to go. So we're kind of waiting for COVID to everything to kind of get back to normal because they're on serious lockdown in Ontario. So, but when everything opens back up, I'm definitely going to go up and visit LaurieAnn for sure.
So how long
There
have
you
you
go.
guys been doing this without meeting each other?
Well, we were involved in something else prior. So it was probably been a couple of years, LaurieAnn, would you say
Yeah.
at least?
I think we met in 2019
Yeah.
Okay.
in around January.
that's a good while.
And so our podcast itself has been running we started it. We kind of did some goofy things like in November, December, but we really started it on Buzzsprout and such in March.
Yeah.
So we
Right about the time.
Gotcha.
COVID
a year
hit.
ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and
How many
2020
episodes do y'all have?
Over 150.
Over 150, yeah, about 100. We're hitting, I think, 155 at this one.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are we up to? 6, 7? I've lost track already.
Hey,
Yeah, it's hard to keep. It's hard to keep up.
we
Hard
were
to
so
keep up.
excited when we got to 5 or 6, believe me.
Yeah.
Even the downloads were going,
Yeah.
woo, we got 10 downloaded.
Yeah.
And
Oh, trust me. Yeah, we've had those conversations about watching the metrics and tracking the numbers. And Josh and I have this running joke. I get so excited because we're on Buzzsprout as well. And so it gives you the geographic location of your listeners. And so when we got our first international listener, I was really excited. I was like, oh my God, we're international. And then we got a little bit more traction. We've actually been heard in 21 different countries now. And we've been heard on every continent that Buzzsprout recognizes, right? And so Antarctica for some reason doesn't count. So I've been going around telling everybody that.
I've got to ask you, do any of them speak
Yeah.
English?
We're not sure.
What's funny is the podcast might be funnier if you don't understand the words.
I actually have a theory that they're just using our podcast to teach English as a second language in a lot of those places.
That would be funny, right? But and so it's like Josh said, we're getting to meet some interesting people, and even though we're only on like 7 or 8, we've actually had a really good success reaching out to guests. I don't think I've had a single guest turn me down so far that I've reached out to, so I'm pretty excited about that.
we did have a period there where we struggled with, and I think it was just, Ryan and I not really looking that hard, but we went through a dry session about, October, November. But then, of course, we got hooked up with, those matchmaking ones. And I mean, there's 2 of them that we use, and I don't mind saying this. So there's Matchmaker FM. They reached out to me on LinkedIn. And then we found Podmatch, which we really like that Podmatch is very much a community, which has been really good. And then now, like, we're booked in until like October.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Wow.
And that's doing
That is
4
awesome.
a week. We do 4 a
You
week.
guys are ambitious.
Wow.
Well,
Holy cow!
we were doing 6 to 10 a week for a while back.
Wow.
Wow!
You guys have day jobs? What do you do?
Well, that's why we had to back off because we couldn't get anything done for doing podcasts.
I'm going to reach burnout. Don't do this. We have to go. We pick 2 days and we do 2 per day. So that's not bad. And then, of course, the rest of the day is done for editing and such. And so it works out to be perfect. The odd time we'll squeeze somebody else in. So we have, 3 on one day, but never more than that. It's a lot more work than we anticipated.
Yeah, seriously, isn't it?
But
And I say that Mike's done Mike's done all of our editing up to this point.
Yeah.
So
LaurieAnn,
I'm sweating a lot. I'm working hard. Heavy lift over here.
Yeah, and it's funny because the last podcast that we recorded, and we'll release it on Monday, we actually interviewed a team, I guess a duet or whatever you want to call it. So it's a man and a woman, and they host a podcast, and it's a super positive one. And it came up that they have an editor. And Josh says, well, Mike does all our editing. And I was like, man, I don't like, what if somebody like points out like, well, the content is good, but the editing of that show is horrible. Like, I don't know that I publicly want that out there too much that I'm in charge of the editing. I don't know how I feel about that, but yeah, it's definitely something that we've been learning as we go. What I have found is there's several really, really good Facebook groups for podcasters. A real community that I've learned of people lifting each other up and giving good advice and even just about how to market your podcast, how to reach your target audience. One of the groups that I was in, they went through the exercise of you need to have your 10-word description of your show. And so just watching people work through that and helping each other give examples of how they would do it was super fun. So the whole process has been just a lot of fun up to this point for me.
Yeah, I agree. And it doesn't feel in those podcast communities, and they got Podfest and everything, everybody helps each other. It doesn't feel like this competitive area at all. You can be doing something very similar to another podcaster, but there's enough room for everybody. And one thing I did learn though, and I mean, I'm going to show you guys, but the listeners won't see, but I got this beautiful Excel spreadsheet. It's got all the columns of the social media and everything I've got to do. And I'm going, wow, I never thought it would be that big.
That is funny. Yeah, it's funny. So I've been on Facebook for a number of years since my kids were little. It was a way to, my oldest son was playing baseball, and it was a way to keep up with the schedule. So I joined Facebook, but I've never had anything else. And we're transparent, right, Josh? We can tell the story.
Yeah. Tell it away.
Okay.
I don't know what story he's about to tell.
You don't know what I'm going to tell.
That's how this works. I just sign off on it. Tell the story.
So I got this thing pop up on my Facebook about freelance resources. They're like, hey, if you need help, blah, 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 blah. So I clicked on this thing, and there's people there that will help you grow your Instagram account, right? So I click on a link, and I didn't even have Instagram. I've heard of it, didn't know what it was, didn't know how to use it. So I reach out, I connect with this guy. He's going to help me manage my Instagram account. We are currently in Instagram jail right now. Apparently some rule we violated for the Instagrams, and our account has been suspended. And we have filed an appeal, which was pretty funny. So I went in to click on it one day, and it said your account's been disabled. So I logged in, and it says your account's been disabled, dismiss or see more details. So I click more details, and it says you have violated one or more of Instagram's policies. If you feel like this was an error, click here to file an appeal. So I clicked on the appeal, and it sent me an email, and I had to literally they sent me a code, and I had to write the code on a piece of paper, and my name and our Instagram handle, which is Total Nonsense with Josh and Bosch, when it comes back up,
find it.
and send a picture. Yeah, send a picture with me holding that piece of paper. And then I sent a nice note about how I was obviously sorry of any rule that I violated, to just let me know how we can fix it. And it's been 3 weeks. So I don't think we're getting out of Instagram jail anytime soon.
So full transparency, that's the first time I've heard this story. So I didn't know that we were in jail. And if we could back the tape up like 2 minutes where Mike asked, hey, can I tell this story? As if I knew, one, what he was going to say, or two, I had ever even heard the story before. This is all brand new information to me.
Yeah. So I try to spare Josh some of the more disturbing details of the goings and ons. No, actually, so what happened is it all happened. Josh was on vacation last week. Josh took his wife up to the even far north tundra, right? Got disconnected from the world, which is super cool, right? And so I didn't want to bother him with the nonsense of being an
The details.
Instagram jail. Yeah, which is actually, we were probably in jail already, and I just didn't tell you. But anyway,
Did you ever find out even what it was that violated? I mean, I know sometimes they'll send me. I think there was
no.
Facebook will give me warnings and they'll tell me this violates it, so it's been deleted. But they never even. Nothing.
My suspicion is that my Instagram employee, or whoever my manager is, probably knows what rule we violated, and he's not sharing that information with me. But I believe it probably surrounded around the fact that he was generating a lot of followers, and maybe his strategy around that didn't align with Instagram's rules, because he was very proud of how many followers we had. He would give me daily updates of, we're at this many followers, and I'm like, cool, man, this is awesome, right? And so I think it's probably something along those lines. So if anybody in the Facebook, Instagram community is out there, is listening, I, Mike Bosch, humbly apologize for anything that somebody on behalf of the show, Total Nonsense with Josh and Bosch, did in violation of the Instagram policy. We are forever remorseful. We will not do it again. If you would just reinstate our account, that would be
and
super,
tell us
super
what
cool.
we did wrong. we can't possibly say we won't do it again if we don't know what it is.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
How did you guys decide to start a podcast together?
Oh man, I thought we were going to get all softballs. That's a hard question, Roy. Josh, do you want to take that?
Yeah. So the story goes back a couple of years, and I had decided that I wanted to start a podcast, and I wanted to start a podcast because my wife and I got remarried a little over 5 years ago, and she had 2 kids and I had 3 kids, and we blended our family. And blending a family is the hardest thing I've ever done, period, hands down. It is so challenging. And I figured that there were other people out there who were going through a similar experience, and I wanted to try and reach out to them. But I was a little bit overwhelmed, a team of 1 at the time. And so trying to refine my idea and get everything in place and really figure it out. How was I going to do this? As you guys already alluded to, it's a ton of work, right? And so I had shared this idea with a bunch of friends, try and get some feedback, some understanding, shared it with Mike, and he kept asking me, hey, when are you going to start it? When are you going to start it? When are you going to start it? And I just kind of, I was a little bit paralyzed, a little bit overwhelmed, like I said. And Mike said, look, if you're not going to start a podcast, I am. And if you want to start a podcast with me, great. And I said, well, what's your idea? And he said, my idea is total nonsense. I paused for a moment because that's not a great elevator pitch, if you just leave it there. But then he elaborated and said, let's take 30 minutes. Let's keep it light. Let's just give everybody a break, and you can learn what you need to learn. We can experiment. We got nothing to lose, right? We just start something, we have some fun, we enjoy it, and see where it takes. So ultimately, we started this podcast because Mike wanted to help me with my podcast, and Mike also really, really enjoys watching the data and the numbers jump up and our followers increase. So twofold, him helping me and him feeling really special. Is that accurate? Is that close?
Yeah, for sure. One of the very first conversations that Josh and I had when we met was, he said, I want to start a podcast. And I had never even heard a podcast. I had heard of podcasts, but I had never heard a podcast. And so I didn't really understand it was something that quote unquote the average person did. I thought you had to be famous and that stuff. So in him telling the story, I was like, well, hey, can I be a guest on your podcast? Like, how do I get involved in this deal? And then he shared with me that he was really passionate about the blended family, and I tried to pitch that I was still qualified, and he's like, no, that's not how that works, right? And so the rest of it was just me badgering him, like, how's it going? What's going on? And I like most things in life, I finally just wore him down. That's been my strategy for 50 years. You work with what, you work with what works, right? And so we started the podcast just to see how things work. And not that we don't take our podcast serious, because we definitely take it serious. We want to have fun. We want to bring a little bit of distraction to the listener. Like Josh alluded to, there's so much negative in the world. And so we're very careful about the content that we put out. It's pretty funny. We had a group on, we had two members of a death metal band on the show. We interviewed them, and like you guys, before you hit record, you have that little pre-meeting and stuff like that. And so we were meeting them for the first time, and I told them, we were like, hey, we don't cuss a lot on the podcast. We try to be respectful. I said, so I don't want to censor you. You're artists, right? I don't want to censor you. Just understand that if you happen to drop the F word, for example, I'm going to dub over it, fiddlesticks, and then we'll just keep moving along, right? And so they were like, oh my gosh, okay. And so it was great. It was a great interview.
Those two, by the way, were a blast. They were so much fun. And I think to Mike's point, right? You come to some of these conversations with the sort of an idea, right? They're a death metal band. That's how they present themselves. And we were about 2/3 of the way through the interview, and one of them, his 4-year-old son, came in and is like, "Good night, Daddy," and then waves to us. And you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was funny because they were so passionate about their music, and Josh, and I didn't realize I had learned something about Josh on that episode. Josh had a music background, and he revealed that he had considered studying music in college. And so there was some degree of, they were talking musical theory for a while. And it was just so not what I thought of going into an interview with two members of a death metal band. It was fun. And then our recent episode, we interviewed the one that we published last week. We interviewed an author who writes mystery suspense novels and self-publishes. And so I got the opportunity to pitch to him a book idea, which I think we're in negotiations for. Is that fair to say, Josh?
I think that's fair to say. I think he was talking to his people, outlining the details. Yeah.
Well, I'll have my people get with you.
Yeah, he was gonna.
Yeah, he's definitely talking to his people.
I think he was sending the details through Instagram, so somehow we may not get those.
Gone.
Yeah. So,
I was just going to say quickly, speaking of the total nonsense, where he stops there, right, and you're going to total nonsense. Okay, it was similar to a story. Roy is writing a book, and it's called Before It's Too Late. And he had a different title, so I talked to the book cover designer, a friend of mine. I said, "Can you change the cover, please?" And he said, "When?" I said, "Whenever you can." And he says, "To what?" I said, "Before it's too late." And then he just kept thinking I was saying before it's too late. I wrote to him, I said, "No, that's the title."
What's wrong with Roy? Why do we have to change this so quickly?
That is funny. They're like, no, we got time. We can settle on something. Don't worry.
Before it's too late. So he kept thinking, it's going crazy. Whenever you can, before it's too late.
Yeah. That's a perfect total nonsense story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, we need to have you on and about the blended family. That'd make a good episode for us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be. I think. Don't you, LaurieAnn?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that'd be great. I think that'd be
Sounds great. So Roy, how's the book going?
great.
Probably too late yet?
Well, no, actually, I've been doing pretty good. I've been doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Trying to get the chapters in, and LaurieAnn's going to do another chapter. So hopefully, another month or so, we'll have it ready to start editing and moving forward with. So,
How long you been working on it?
seriously working on it, about 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Talking about it about a year and a half.
Okay, so you and I are on the same schedule here, clearly.
Yeah. No, I just well, the premise of it is one of my best friend from childhood that I was closest to passed away, and so I was trying to. It was just the concept came up. There were things I wish I would have told him before he passed away that I never did, and so I think a lot of people pass away. They wish they would have said this to him. Or they wish they would have told him they loved him or whatever, forgave him, whatever. So that was kind of the concept of it. But every time I'd start trying to write it, it was just overwhelming. It was too emotional. I couldn't do it. And so finally, as a matter of fact, this last Sunday, he's been gone 4 years. And so I decided I need to get this thing done. And so I just kind of pushed through it, and it was hard to do, but I did it. And once I got his chapter done, then I was able to go on to some more of my friends. So and the next, another childhood friend of mine that I've known since we were kids passed away last September. And so when I was doing his chapter here a couple of weeks ago, that when I was doing the last chapter, I was crying the whole time I did it.
Oh, wow.
So it's just, but I've been able just to push myself and get through it. I'm glad that I'm doing it because it's important to me. So
How does it feel?
Do you feel like it's?
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say how does that? How do you feel when you're done? I could imagine that you'd be one, relieved, and two, just like completely wiped out.
well, yeah, you're exactly right. Doing it, of course, as you progress, I like to do a chapter. Then the next day I might do a chapter, but the last chapter is always the hardest because that's when I tell about how they died or whatever, and then that's the one that's hardest to do for me.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to ask is, do you feel like it's part of that grieving process, the kind of almost like a therapy or therapeutic process as such, to be able to kind of walk through those emotions, because everybody does handle grief differently, but we all, when we experience a loss, especially someone who was close to us, we have to have that process of emotions. And is that one of the things that you're using this book to help you with?
Yeah, and I'm hoping that other people, it helps them too. Because
Gotcha.
I just friendship has always been very important to me, and for me personally, in my whole life, I've probably only had 5 people at any time that I consider my true friends. I know a lot of people have a lot of acquaintances, but the ones that are my true friends are the ones that you can count on no matter what. And these guys were those type people, and I was the same to them. So it's I was closer to them than I was my brother sometimes.
Yeah.
And you guys can probably understand that, but anyway, so yeah.
Well, definitely truly sorry for your loss. And now I understand why LaurieAnn doesn't want you to come. She's like, I don't want to get that close to him.
Well, in all
She's like, my days are numbered.
he started that book, and I just did was a very close friend of mine just about 2 weeks ago or so, and so that's the chapter I'll be writing on. And just a wonderful man. There was an interesting thing about him, and you can actually listen to him on our podcast. It's Doc Grayson, and he spoke to having been told that he didn't have much time left, and how it changed his mindset. And he said, in one point, he said there's an actual strange comfort to it once you get past it. And I thought that was really interesting. So he spoke a bit to that. I knew it was coming, even when you know it's coming.
Yeah. But not
It's
until
still,
it happens. Yeah. You're not prepared like you think you are when it happens.
So I was, this last week, I was on vacation, as Mike alluded to, and my wife and I have a cabin in northern Minnesota, about 30 miles from the Canadian border, actually. And we had two of our very close friends join us. And one of them was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer 5 years ago. And we were sitting around the campfire and just hanging out and talking. And she's at this point, she mentioned that her cancerversary is coming up. It's next week, I think. She's 5 years. And she is in a place where she's struggling a little bit with her purpose, like her legacy. Those were the two words she used: her purpose, her legacy. And she said, when I got my diagnosis, I remember one of the first things she told me was, I'm going to see Austin, our daughter, graduate high school, which was still 2.5, almost three years out from her diagnosis. And she said, I'm going to see Austin graduate. And that's like the statement she made. Well, her daughter is now a freshman in college, finishing up her first year, and she's coming up on her 5-year cancerversary. And she's trying to process this of, she now has, so when she gets a scan, her scans are clean. She doesn't have cancer on the scans, but she has to be on a continued dose of chemotherapy to keep it that way. So in the foreseeable future, she will be having chemotherapy every 3 weeks to keep the cancer at bay. And so she's got this mindset now that this can continue on, but what does that mean? And we were talking about that same thing. Like, how does somebody who's not staring at a stage 4 cancer diagnosis process finding my purpose or my legacy? Because we all feel like, well, I've got time, I'll figure that out. It'll come into focus as I move forward. I don't need to worry about that today. But as soon as somebody says you have stage 4 cancer, or you have a clean scan, but you'll be on chemotherapy for the foreseeable future, the rest of your life potentially, you start to think about that in a much more tangible way of, what am I doing? Right. And her wife is telling her, you're doing it, right? You've got family that call you and you support them and guide them. She's got nieces and nephews who are calling her daily, just checking in, just talking, getting advice from Aunt Amy. She has tons of friends that she's supporting. And so her wife is telling her, Amy, you're already leaving your legacy. You're filling your purpose, but Amy's still wrestling with that on her own level, right? So to your point of, it really, really changes the dynamic.
Well, LaurieAnn's friend, one thing about him is, and he said, I'm ready. I don't regret anything. I've led a good life. I mean, and he was such a, I didn't know him near as long as LaurieAnn, but I mean, he was a pretty amazing guy. But he was at peace. He was ready. He said he had no regrets. He had a good life.
The only thing that I have to finish up for him, though, is he finished his final book, which he knew was going to be his final one. And it's on graphotherapy. And it's at the publishers. And all he wanted was to hold it in his hand. And he didn't get that far. But he did get it completed. So I just want to make sure that with the help of our community of handwriting experts, we're going to come together and make sure that it gets on Amazon, gets out to the hands of other people, too. Because that was his.
Well, that's awesome that you are going to see that through for him.
That's
LaurieAnn. That is awesome.
Yeah, I can't imagine a better legacy than for me, less important about the book, more important for the community to carry that on, right? If you want to leave a legacy, to have a community that says, we're going to carry your torch forward, whatever that is, that's a legacy.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, to your point and to Amy's story, it's the impact that you leave on people that really, no matter where you are in your journey or your your walk in life, it's the impact that you leave on somebody ultimately becomes your legacy, right? It's not about what you how much money you made or what you acquired, or you can win all these awards and all that, but really at the end of the day, it's right, it's the impression that you leave on the people that you interacted with.
And I'd just like to point out at this moment that Mike and I have decided to start a podcast called Total Nonsense. So the impression we're leaving upon everybody is our total nonsense. So
Yeah,
here's to our legacy.
there you go.
And keep it up.
Yeah.
But people don't realize how much they touch other people's lives.
Yeah.
Yes.
'Cause you're just going through your day-to-day stuff, and you may or may not, somebody may come up to you and tell you, hey, you did this for me, you told me this, and you don't know that, but then when they pass away and they all gather at the funeral, they'll always go up to the spouse or the brother or sister and say, oh, he did this for me, he told me this, and I went to a funeral one time, and they had these like 3x5 index cards, and they said, hey, if you feel like it, just jot down something about my dad, and so they got all that together. They put together this, I just call it a book, but I mean it's just, and they told there, John Smith said this, and it was really something to read, because the impact on all these people,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm, you never know that. And all the kids were so great, because the both parents passed away. They had a car accident, so they were gone at the same time.
Oh.
And they had 4 children. So, and they put this together, and it was very meaningful to them. The impact.
Yeah, I could see that would be. Yeah.
The impact their dad had on so many people.
Right.
So
To the point of your book, though, Roy, is we all have that opportunity, right? We're not only do we impact others' lives, right, but others, like every one of us, have been impacted by people that we know, and we should take the time, right, to let them know while they're still able or with us of that impact, right?
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Which just quickly, we have one book, and Roy contributed to it too. It's called Makeup Not Required: How to Brand the True You. But in that, of course, we have acknowledgments, and I didn't know where to stop. It's like 5 pages of acknowledgments.
And a whole nother index to the back.
That's funny. That's funny.
The second
my
book,
kindergarten teacher, my swim coach.
That one guy at the store who always bags my groceries so nice.
Yeah, but when we stop and think about it, there are a lot of people who have touched our lives throughout.
Oh yeah,
Very, very nice.
for sure.
Yeah, and so case in point, Mike once, I shared a story with Mike. Mike thought that it would be a good story to share on your podcast, and I would agree based off of that comment. So I was in, where was I? Oh, I was in Houston 2 weeks ago. No, well, I mean, not by my choice. I was there, not by my choice. So on our podcast, we had our first paying sponsor, and so we did a commercial. It's a family-owned salsa company in Missouri, and one of the family members is a coworker of ours. So we made a kind of squiggly dotted line connection, and so we wrote a commercial, and we did a commercial, and they paid us in jars of salsa. So it's not a super lucrative contract yet. We're working on it. Sweet Kickin' Salsa. So if you've heard of them, or not, you can go online, order yourself a couple of jars. I'm looking for more salsa. So I went to Dallas first, and Mike had the jars of salsa, and he gave me a jar of salsa. So then I had to drive down to Houston, and then I get to the airport, and apparently a full-size jar of salsa is larger than what you can take onto the airplane. And I thought, and I don't check baggage, it was just in my carry-on, because I was a short trip, couple of carry-ons. So I go through the TSA, they check my bag. I'm at the end of the TSA line, right? This is that point where you go through the doors to get to your plane, or you go back through the doors, never to return, right? There isn't like a third door that, maybe you can, so you've got one of two choices, and the TSA agent pulls the bottle of salsa out, and he says, you can't take this with you. It's too much. Do you want to leave it, or do you want to eat it? They said, dude, unless you got a bag of chips, I can't finish. Even if you did, I can't finish a whole jar of salsa sitting here. And so he's a very large man, right? He's got to be like 6'5", big dude, and very clear spoken. You can't take this with you. I'm like, if you say I can't take it with you, and he stops and he looks at the jar, give me a minute. I'm going to see if I can help you. And he walks over, over there, and he starts doing some stuff. He comes back over here and looks at my bag, and then he goes back over there, and he's looking at some stuff, and he comes back over. He says, all right, I tested it. I'm going to let you take it with you, but nobody else is going to ever let you take a whole jar of salsa with you on an airplane. So don't do this again. And I just, he had no idea what that jar of salsa meant to me. Right. That was our first paying gig. This was as good as it's gotten so far. And he had no idea about that. But, he did his job. He checked it out. It was a sealed jar of salsa, and he tested it. And he gave me the grace to take some salsa home with me, and it was delicious. So it's great on the habanero salsa is great on eggs, just if anybody's asking. Again, Sweet Kickin' Salsa, Missouri. You can find it online.
Yeah, www.sweetkickandsalsa.com.
Okay, now you owe us a jar here, guys.
We'll see if we can work that out. Maybe we can get Roy to bring it. We can get Roy to bring it with you when he comes to visit you.
Hey, it's easy for me because I could drive over to Mike and actually physically get it.
There you go. But you can't fly it. You got to check that. Okay. Yeah. You got to mail it.
You got to check that one.
Check it.
Oh, that's lovely. But you're right. There's somebody who made a difference and, made an impression on you. So even strangers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Glad you had your salsa.
You make both.
Yeah.
Oh, this is terrific. Thank you so much for being on our podcast. And,
thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
A little bit more about both of you too, so that's kind of fun. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, we definitely wish you luck on your book there, Roy. Hopefully you'll get to power through that and get to share that with with the world. And we definitely appreciate you guys letting us come on and talk a little nonsense during lunch. So this was fun.
I'll tell you what I'll do, guys. I'll send both of you an autographed copy.
Nice.
Oh, yes.
I like it.
I'm going to hold you to that.
Of course, it'll be COD, but that's okay.
Extra C for the signature.
Yeah, the book doesn't cost anything. It's the signature that costs.
Yeah, that's the valuable part.
That's right. Yeah. Lord, I wish.
That's funny.
Oh, man.
You have a great, whoever's left of the afternoon. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you both. It's been great.
It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit us at lifterstory.com.